mean ethics reform, and what will this, now I don't want you to speak generally, I want you to speak specifically, what kind of ethics reforms will this bring?
Well, the word ethics reform is a shorthand that almost is too short because there's actually a lot there. You might call it political regulation reform would almost be a better word for it, because there's three kinds of political regulation reform that were all strengthened here. So first, let me just talk about the one that is under the word quote-unquote ethics. Obviously, we all want to be ethical, and we'd like to think we were ethical before reform and after reform.
I would like to believe that too.
And in terms of the things like bribery and taking money, these things have been.
Well, that's illegal.
That is illegal.
So that's not just ethics; that's law.
Exactly. I think that's an.
I hope.
Well, these are ethics laws, though. I mean, but there's a sort of an end of the spectrum which we all know is bad and has always been bad for millennia has been bad, and we recognize taking bribes as wrong. And you've always had the federal government is the backstop on those kind of crimes, and for police corruption, for public legislator corruption, for all kinds of public corruption. The United States Attorney plays a critical role, and you've seen it once again. I mean, all the cases that all the guys that have gone down in past years have always been federal indictments, and that's true across the country. So there's that background of fundamental criminal conduct stuff. Then there's this area of ethics, which is, okay, well, can a lobbyist buy you lunch?
Okay. Talk about these reforms.
Well,
can a lobbyist buy you lunch?
No, and that's not a
no, they can't.
Not at all. They can't buy you a cup of coffee.
Okay.
And that's they're just an black and white rule.
Has that always been?
That's since before this reform, it's been the case. I don't know how it probably goes back a couple of decades.
Okay, this reform. What does this reform do with it?
It increases the penalties. That's the main thing that this reform does from a law standpoint. It doesn't really change the law. Most of these things have been against the law, have been at least civil violations already, but it increases the penalties substantially. It turns receiving gifts. There's a bribe gift. Okay, well, that's obvious. But then there's sort of more like, well, you're a great guy. Play golf because I want to have a good relationship with you. I'll buy you. Come down and play golf with me.
Hey, Will, nice to see you. Would you like a piece of gum?
Can't take it. You're a lobbyist. I can't take it,
okay.
And you can't offer it. That's how strict it is, and it's always been that strict, or even before.
Okay, so what did this reform do?
Number one, substantial increase in penalties. Number two, increase in the powers of the enforcers to investigate these crimes. Subpoena power,
okay,
and more ability to start leveraging them up more quickly, So that's basically
gifts. Isn't there a big gift thing?
Well, the gift thing. That's I want to emphasize that. That's always been illegal. Even before these reforms, the relationship type gifting has been illegal. What's now happened is it's criminal, and it's instead of a civil fine, a slap on the wrist, that kind of thing, the penalties have gone up. And the other thing is, under the old law, the Ethics Commission had the power to regulate, but only to carve out exemptions. To say, for example, look, $50, we're not going to worry about it if it's under $50.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But now there's a structure in place that allows them to more affirmatively say, these are the hoops you've got to go through and to define it.
Well, then why are lobbyists even allowed on Beacon Hill?
Well,
they roam the hallways.
I think
How can that even happen?
Okay, so that's they don't have to give you anything. I mean, they have a right to free speech. I mean, everybody has a right to free speech. I mean, I think that access to the legislative process, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with the idea of lobbying. There is a cultural thing though that happens, and it's about there's guys that are in the building every day, and there's a relationship thing that develops. Hi, how you doing? What's happening, Brownsberger? And looking good today. And that kind of interaction every day creates a family, a congregation, a little culture.
It does, actually.
And
they're the people you see at work.
They're the people you see at work.
You see Barbara Miranda. You see, Alice Peisch. You see, and then you see like all the lobbyists.
And so that's absolutely an issue. And some of those guys are, most of those guys are getting paid there to be there and say, "Hey, Brownsberger, you're looking good today," and and so you have to. So the second layer of the reforms, is lobbying reform and pushing back. Requiring a lot more disclosure by lobbyists, and again, just making that more transparent.
Now, was this hypocrisy? No, not hypocrisy. What is it when a story is false?
A lie?
Was this a lie that Governor Patrick sent gifts to DeLeo and to Therese Murray?
Well, apparently, I don't know. I mean, all I know is what I read in the newspaper is what he sent. Yeah,
he supposedly sent gifts. To
sent a box of cigars and some flowers.
Some flowers.
That doesn't sound.
Sounds crazy.
Doesn't sound
to be
like
sending gifts because, well, at any rate,
not particularly good taste in the context of the whole thing.
No.
But yeah. And then there's a bunch of rules. Then the other layer, so you have the ethics stuff, which is about gifts, conflict of interest. Penalties are increased, regulators' powers are increased. Mm-hmm. That's one layer of reform. Mm-hmm. The lobbying stuff, a lot more disclosure. Lobbyists have to explain more of what they're doing, who they're seeing, what they're seeing them about. Then the last layer is political finance reform, and certain kinds of gifting has been changed. Campaign contributions have been limited, and also the reporting that people make has to be more detailed, and frequent. One of the biggest issues that occurred over the past couple of years was there was one of the members of the House who was making large payments to a quote-unquote consultant every month. And it turned out that those payments were actually going back and paying a mortgage on his house. So he was basically using campaign funds to pay mortgage on a second home on the Cape.
Yeah.
And there was, I'm using it with the consultant.
And he's still in the legislature.
He is still in the legislature, and that, was that a true violation or not? It was actually a fairly gray area. I'm not sure the last shoes have dropped on that case, but right now there's been an investigation that didn't lead to any significant action. Maybe he gave something back or something, but. There was not any penalties that I recall being imposed out of that. So that kind of stuff, there's increased reporting. So this transparency stuff, I think, is very significant. The key thing is the public has to look at it. We file all those reports. The reports that are on the file today in the Office of Campaign and Political Finance tell an interesting story about how reps who they relate to, where they get their money from, mm-hmm. Who they're dependent on, and how they're spending their money. But people may not look at those